Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am going to make a squash book mini album. I have a lot of my pieces already cut and ready to go. Let me start with the page base for our mini album. And I haven't quite cut this yet. You're going to need 3 page bases. These two I've already scored and folded, but I'll show you how to do that now. So this particular mini album, I'm starting with solid color cardstock that is 8.5 by 8.5 square. So this is going to be very ideal if you happen to have a lot of US letter size cardstock. I've made this album in a lot of different sizes. Really, you can do this with any square. You just want to make sure, even when you have US letter size and it's supposed to be 8.5 by 11, always still double check that it is actually 8.5. Sometimes it's actually a smidge wider. So we're gonna start there. And then what I want to do is put my score lines in. So I want to score this along the 8.5-inch edge, either one, because we're going to do the same on both. You want to score it in half. So half of 8.5 is 4.25. If you're adapting this to a different size, you just want to score it in half. Rotate 90 degrees so that you're on the other edge, and then score in half again. So once you have these 2 score lines in, we've basically created 4 squares. Now what you want to do is turn to the other side. I just scored this side. Now I want to flip it over to the back, and I want to line up the diagonal corners, and I'm going to score from corner to corner along the diagonal edge. So corner to corner. I like to use my cutting track on this board because I can clearly see that those 2 corners are in the same track. If you like to mark your scoreboards, I just can't bring myself to actually mark up my scoreboard. But if you have a scoreboard, you could just easily, take a Sharpie and draw a straight line all the way down. That can help you to really make sure that, because on a scoreboard like this, it's so easy. You could be just off by 1 and you're not going to get the desired result. So with that done, we can start to fold and burnish. So I always fold my score lines as mountain folds. So where you have the indentation, bring that up as a mountain. And even though we measured it to be half, I still like to just really make sure that all my corners are lining up, that my edges are lined up, and then you want to fold. Then open that up, and along the opposite, you want to fold and burnish that as well. So there's that. Okay, so we've got those 2 in. Now for the diagonal. Again, you want to look for where the indented line is, where your score line is. You want to fold that as a mountain. So this is going to be the opposite of how we folded the first 2 score lines. So just go ahead and burnish that out. Okay, so now when everything just naturally wants to kind of do its fold, you'll see you can pinch these 2 corners, bring them together, and everything is going to collapse down into a perfect little square. So now with it stacked as a square, I like to just burnish again. So run your bone folder along the 2 edges that are scored and along the center here, because we have 2 folds right here So that's why I burnish like this, to really flatten those. And then I flip it over. And again, I'm burnishing the two edges that have the fold. There's a fold there and a fold there. And then I'm going to burnish from this side down the center to really, again, flatten these inside. And so now I've got one piece like this, and you'll want to have two more exactly like that. Okay, so next, I like to put my page bases together and then start to decorate, because it helps me to kind of visualize what is gonna be where, and that way I can, as I'm decorating, I know what's going to be on display and how it's going to be positioned. Now, what you want to do is you actually will want to flip this one, the center one, so that it's actually going the opposite direction as the two yellow pieces on either side, so that when these actually get glued together, they will still fold down into a nice tidy little square. So I'll show you that again. We're gonna have, if the yellow one has the folds coming in this way, then you want your green one to have all the points, all the corners point away from you. And then for the next yellow page, I want all the corners to point towards me. So here are all the corners of the original square. I want them to point towards me. And I actually want to glue this so that when this opens up, the green, which is kind of, you know, my accent piece here, I want all of the green to be showing. So when I glue this down, I'm going to glue this so that the green is on top. And that way it's going to be visible. All four squares of your green will be visible, and then only 3 blocks of your yellow should be visible on each side. That helps to balance things a little bit more too, because otherwise, if you were to fold this on top, you'll have quite a lot of yellow and not a lot of green. And maybe that's the look that you want, but for me, I rather prefer that look. So what I'm going to do is I am going to get a little bit of double-sided dry adhesive tape, and I will, if you've ever seen me make a mini album, you'll be familiar with this. What I like to do is on the outside edges, I always like to put dry adhesive, you know, kind of as close to those outside edges as I can. So there's those two outside edges, and I'm just going to do this one at a time. I'm not going to get ahead of myself and try to do the other side too. That's how I get myself mixed up sometimes. So on the yellow, these two are the outside edges, so I will put adhesive there. I don't need to put adhesive here, because when the green overlaps, you can kind of see the adhesive strips from the green will take care of that. And then I'm just going to do a little squiggle of liquid adhesive in the center. This way I can keep my liquid adhesive away from the outside edges, and hopefully that'll keep it tidier so it doesn't ooze out, but it's still going to give me some nice permanent hold to this. And the dry adhesive is going to be really good for keeping this all stuck down so that I can continue to work on the next pages and not have to worry about this shifting. Now my glue is a little bit... Let me try to unclog this. Alright, so, and if you are using this as a mini album, you want to make sure whatever adhesive you do use, that it is archival safe and acid free and all of that good stuff. Now, when I go to place this, what I want to make sure to do is I can see that little curl, that little roll of cardstock right at the fold. What I'm going to try to do is get right up next to that, but I don't want to cross it at all. I don't want to overlap it at all. I just want to get right up near it and not over it. That way everything will fold down nice and flat. You don't have any bulkiness over the, see how that still folds down over it, nice and neat. So that's what we want. And you can test the opposite side, should be the same. It should fold down nice and neat. Now you might end up with like a little bit, on the outer edge like this, so it's not going to stack down like 100% covered, but it will fold better and it will lay flatter. So I think that's much preferred. Okay, so now that we've got the first 2 pages connected, let's now connect our 3rd page. So remember, here's the 4 points of my cardstock are pointed away from me, so I want these 4 points to point towards me. And I'll do the same thing where I am going to put dry adhesive, double-sided adhesive tape. I like to use a nice strong adhesive, but you can use whatever you prefer, and get that as close to the edge as possible. Also, when I'm handling my dry adhesive, I try very hard not to touch it because, the more you touch it, the less sticky it becomes, because it's, got some of your skin cells on there, whatever, oils, lotions, etc. on your hands might transfer to it. So just try to not touch it. And I just hold it at the edge like this when I peel it up. And then I always use the my little baby acrylic block here to hold that down and then tear against it. Then now that we have, and what I always like to do is I always like to burnish once right after putting my dry tape down, because the more layers you have, like if I burnished only after I stuck the 2 down, well, the contact between, your tape and your cardstock, the more layers you have to kind of push through, the less effective your burnishing is. So by really burnishing this down, it has the effect of really making sure that that has solid contact. We're pushing as much air out as possible, because any air that gets trapped there is going to possibly dry up your adhesive. And as a result, it may lose its stickiness over time. And that's why dry adhesive, and it really just depends on the climate that you live in, it isn't always permanent, and that's why I always like to use a little bit of liquid adhesive too. Now, if you feel like you really need like some extra wiggle room, you can always put a little bit of liquid adhesive right over your dry adhesive, especially if you're using score tape, which is very strong grabbing. So if you need that little bit of wiggle room, that little bit of insurance, definitely use a little bit of liquid adhesive over top. And otherwise, I'm just aiming to try to get my corner right up against the score line. Make sure that it's nice and straight. Before I burnish, I just want to fold this down and really make sure everything folds down nicely. It does. So now I'm going to burnish again. And this helps to really make sure that you push all the air out of your dry adhesive, and if you're using a liquid adhesive, it helps to spread out your liquid adhesive so that it doesn't have any glue lines or any bumps or anything. And then you also get more coverage of your adhesive. So that's the album base done, and now you can just decorate. So to decorate, I have already cut some fabulous papers from the Enjoy This Life Fall Retreat by Not Too Shabby. And I have already selected my pattern papers. So what I am thinking I will do is I'll have something like this pattern. Let's see. That. I might do this here, and then these in the center, and then my plaids will go on these corners here. Okay, so that is my plan. So let's start with the easy pieces. I'll leave these two pieces to last. Now, the easiest pieces to glue down are going to be the 4 that go across the center here, because it's just a flat circle. There are no folds going through them. So all you need to do is just eyeball an even margin all the way around and then glue. So you can use, if you want, your dry adhesive. Again, I like to do, and you can kind of put any sort of pattern you like to this, whatever combination of papers you like, if you want, because especially now that you see the whole album, all the album pages sort of laid out, you can kind of see the various different patterns you can create, and you can decide what look you want to go for. And so if you want more diversity, you can definitely pick. I mean, there's so many opportunities for decorating. So let me just go ahead and get my double-sided dry adhesive on all 4 edges. I like to do this because it helps to minimize any sort of lifting that might happen, because if it happens, it's more likely to happen on the outer edges where maybe a corner isn't stuck down completely and something snags on it. So I like to make sure that I try to get as much as possible some dry adhesive all the way to the edges, all the way to the corners, as much as possible. Sometimes it's pretty close, but not perfect, and that's fine. But I still want this to be nice and permanently stuck down, so I want to make sure that I also use some liquid adhesive, but this helps to, you could use just all liquid adhesive if you want, but I know for me, if I used all liquid adhesive, I would still want to try to get adhesive all the way to the edge. And so that means I'm going to be running liquid adhesive pretty close to the edge, which means it will likely ooze out from under the edges, and then it's just going to be a little bit messier. So I find this to be a little bit tidier. So then with all of these pieces, I'll do the same thing I suggested before. Just give a quick burnish to all of them. And that helps to knock the air out. And then we can start to glue these down. And the other thing that burnishing helps with is because you've made sure that that adhesive has made really firm contact with the paper, lifting off the liner becomes a lot easier too. And then I can just do a quick little squiggle of liquid adhesive in the center. Line this up. and then burnish. So I've cut my squares to be 4 by 4, and that gives me just a nice little border all the way around all 4 edges. It helps to kind of frame each of these pattern papers. But you could cut these smaller if you like to see a little bit more of that solid color cardstock coming through. Whatever you like, whatever look you're going for, it's completely up to you. And I do prefer a non-directional paper, so that because these are going to be presented basically as on a diamond, on the diagonal, your directional papers might look a little bit off, but to be honest, if you're putting photos in here, it's gonna be, well, I guess it depends on how you frame the photo. It's gonna have a direction to it, the photo, so even if you put a directional paper in here, I think it would still be okay. So we'll slide all this down and get our last panel in. So these ones are the easy ones, and then we'll tackle the next ones. And those are going to be the rest of the 2 squares on each of the yellow page bases. So just eyeball what's even here, and then I'll burnish. Okay, so with the 2 blocks here, I've chosen some plaids for that. And I like to always do mine kind of mirrored. So whatever I'm doing on the left side, I'm going to do that on the right side too. I'm just going to mirror it. Now, here's the interesting thing. You might think, oh, these little triangles, that's not going to be a lot of interesting space to decorate. But here's the trick. These actually will fold like this. So I can actually put a 4 by 4 square here, and as long as I'm only gluing it to one of the triangles, I can actually still collapse it down flat. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to glue to this triangle here. So that same trick of getting your double-sided dry adhesive to the edge, I want to do that. But in this case, I just need to do this edge and that edge. And I don't want to get too far into this corner here. The reason being that if this corner is going to go here, see how this triangle goes like that? If I took this adhesive all the way to the edge, I might have more adhesive showing than I need. So that's this is the other edge that needs double-sided dry adhesive. So there's that. All right. And then I want to make sure that there's no lifting along this diagonal, so I'll also put a bit of dry adhesive along this diagonal edge here. Okay. So there we have that. It's all burnished. I am going to go ahead and peel off the liners. Now, I do want to still use a liquid adhesive, but it's only safe to put adhesive on this triangle. So I'm just going to do a squiggle of adhesive just on this triangle here. And these are the 2 edges that have my adhesive strips, so I can hold that there. And what I want to do is just eyeball this so that I have that nice border going all the way around. And you should be able to line up your corners, and everything should be even. All right, so now what we've done is given ourselves a lot of real estate to decorate. So now instead of decorating a funny little triangle, you have the full square that will still let you fold down completely. Okay, so now the trick is, now that we've got this one folded this way, what you want to do is make sure that the one that is on top, that you've attached it to the opposite side. So I glued down to the right side, the right triangle on this side. So on here, I'm going to glue the left triangle. So again, just need 2 edges with my dry adhesive. And that's one edge, and then this will be my next edge. Actually, we'll have that be, there we go. Oops. All right. Burnish. Then a little bit of dry adhesive along the diagonal. And then a little bit of liquid adhesive just on this triangle here. And same thing, I've got my adhesive here. I want to glue it down to this. Just eyeballing. You can kind of look at the other pattern papers you have down as a guide. You can look at the corners and trying to get the corner to line up on the diagonal fold, whatever you need to use as a reference. But there we have it. So now you can see when this folds, they're coming at each other in opposite directions, so they're not going to obstruct each other when you open and close them. How cool is that, right? So now we want to do the same thing on this side. So again, I like to mirror things so that they're symmetrical. So here I've glued it to the edge that's kind of on the inside here. So I'm going to glue this here. And then on this side, I'm going to do the opposite and glue that piece there. Okay? So we're going to do that whole process over again, but I'm going to do it on this side. So again, this is the corner that's going to get the 2 adhesive strips. And get the diagonal edge. And then while I'm here, I'll just get the diagonal edge on this side now that I know what I'm doing. And it's nice to sometimes just do these one step at a time. I know a lot of times when I'm making anything that has like a lot of repeat steps, I tend to prefer to do that single step for everything, and then kind of do one stage at a time. But for this, sometimes it's a little bit helpful to really just take it one by one and, custom fit each piece one by one. And that way, less likely to have errors. So I've got this down, and this I can peel off. Get a little bit of liquid adhesive there. And then I can position this. The nice thing about using a non-directional paper is that For this, you could very well just put 2 strips of dry adhesive and ahead of time, because it doesn't really matter, which corner you put them. You can always turn it and it would work. That's because it's non-directional. If you had a directional paper, I would definitely just do one panel at a time so that you know the orientation of that exact piece, where it's going to go, how it's going to be turned, what it will look like in its final position. I feel like you're less, especially if it's pattern paper that is like absolutely gorgeous and you don't have a lot of it. It would not be fun to have to recut anything. Okay, so last piece in. Let's just get this lined up. And there we go. And then we burnish. Okay, so we've got our easiest pieces in, our second easiest pieces are in. That only leaves these right here in the center. But I'll show you how nicely this all still folds down into, it's becoming a thicker and thicker square, but it's still a nice, tidy little square. Okay, and now we've got, essentially 8 full squares that you can put photo mats onto or photos onto and decorate. You cannot do the same thing for these squares here, because these squares fold like a little taco, and so you can't put a full square here because it would need to bend, it would need to fold. So the way that I cut for those is, all I'm gonna do is take my square, so this is the same size square, 4x4, and I'm gonna line up the corners on my cutting blade, and I'm just going to cut this in half diagonally to get 2 triangles. Oh, I think I'll use this color. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, I don't know. Now I'm second guessing. Okay, maybe I'll stick to that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think I'll go with the lighter colors. I feel like, oh man, I feel like they're more yellow, so maybe that brings the yellow more into the center. Okay, I'm just gonna go with that. All right, so let's also trim this one, cut this in half diagonally. Now, here's the part that might get a little bit tricky, because there's a fold here. So there's a score line, and if we were to stick to the same border all the way around, these diagonal edges would have to overlap that score line. And we don't want that, because we want everything to fold down nicely, and you still want a nice equal border all the way around, save for that fold line, that score line. So all I'm gonna do is just take a fly's eyelash off of the diagonal edge of both triangles. And it's really just like a sliver close. I'm not measuring, I'm just taking just that little bit off. I might take a little bit more than that, actually. Maybe 1/32 of an inch, possibly. About that much. Not a lot at all. I'll go back and take a little bit more off the other one. And it doesn't have to be perfect or equal. It's really just so that we can make some room for, and I'll do the same on the other two, but I'll glue these in just so that you can see. It's so that we can make some room for that score line in the center there. So I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing, where I put some dry adhesive all the way on the outer edges. So that's going to include the long triangle edge, diagonal edge, and I'll do the same on this side. And then we're going to repeat for the other two as well. If you wanted, you could use just your double-sided dry adhesive. But again, I would worry, especially if you're in a humid climate. If you're making this like as just a novelty something, maybe don't sweat it too much. But if you're making this and you really, want it to last and you want people to keep it and treasure it, then use something permanent like the liquid adhesive. And of course, I like the combination of the two for the reasons I mentioned earlier. You could mix these up too. If you wanted, you could do some really fun things here where, maybe you take two different patterns, and you put them next to each other. I think that would be really fun also. So here what I'm looking to do is, what I want is to get a border along, the straight edges, and I'm looking for this diagonal edge to just come up next to that fold, next to the score line, but not cross over it. And so you're gonna see as a result a little bit of the green cardstock running through the center. And that is so that this will all fold down nice and flat and neatly when it is closed. Because otherwise you might have some troubles. And just nudge things where you need. That looks about right. Okay, so there you have it. So now you can see when I go to fold this, see how it's gonna fold in on itself, still perfectly flat. And you can see that green of the score line. That's just really enough for the score line. That's all we were trying to do by cutting those little slivers. If I didn't cut those slivers, what would have to happen is I would still need to glue this a little bit away from the score line, and then my border on these outside edges will start to disappear. So by cutting a little bit off, I can preserve the outside border. So we just need to do that again on these two. And you just need to, a guillotine is really good for this. I kind of find paper trimmers, it's possible to do. If you're using a paper trimmer, what I would do is sink your blade in the center, pull out to the edge, bring your blade in from this edge and pull out to the corner. Because you're trying to cut just a thin corner, and you're gonna, if you try to run your trimmer blade against this, it's gonna hit that sharp edge, and instead of cutting through it, it might actually just crush your paper, because it's hitting kind of a sharp edge, that angled edge, as opposed to just slicing through. So that's why I would sink in the middle and then pull outwards, and then go in from the opposite side to do the same. Here, actually, let me show you. So I've got this. I'm gonna just try to take a very small sliver off. So I'm gonna sink in the center and pull, bring it back to the center and pull away. So you can see I still got a really thin little bit, and see at the bottom here, it actually didn't cut through cleanly because it's getting to be at like a more narrow, so it just tore. But that's okay, it's just a little bit. You can clean that up really easily. All right, so whatever you have, it's going to be possible to do. If you don't have either of these, you can just use a ruler and a craft knife. That would work too. And so I will go ahead and get adhesive on these edges. And this can be for a little brag book if you want. It can be for little keepsakes. You could add little, I've made these where I've turned some of these pages into little pockets that I've added to them so that you can actually put things into them. And I'll show you one version that has some photo mounts if you want to use it for photos. So lots of fun different things that you can do with this. It's a lot of space to decorate, but if you look at each individual page, it's pretty small. So I think you'll find that it's easier than you might expect to decorate each of these each of these page bases. So there's that. Last one. So you just have to remember that on these inside two pieces, you really can't have anything crossing over that score line. On the outside page bases, those triangle pieces, you do have some room to play with things hanging off the edge, so long as you're only adhering it to one of the triangles and not both, so that it can still collapse down and fold down. See how everything still tucks in and folds down neatly. So that is all of the pages decorated. Now let me show you some options for an option for what you can do to decorate. So here's a big one. This has a base of a 12 by 12 solid color cardstock. So each piece of pattern paper here is actually 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, so nearly the full 6 by 6. But each square is 6 by 6. I just like having that nice little border all the way around. So what I did on this one was I just added some photo mats, and then this, you can completely cover the white with a photo cut to the same size. But if it's not yet, covered with a photo, I did stamp a little design onto these so that for some of these, maybe you want to put a photo. For others, maybe you want to do some journaling or some captioning, or, just whatever you'd like. You can maybe add something decorative to this panel itself and decorate it, as opposed to cover it up completely. But at least this way, if I give this as a gift, for example, whoever gets this has some options for what to do. They can either cover this white up completely with some photos, or they can continue to decorate with it. And on the other side, you have the same. And then in the center, it's the same thing where you have the two solid panels for a total of 8 photos. You got 4 there and 4 there. So that's the big version of this. Now this, once it's all together, it folds down very flatly, and you don't really need a closure to kind of keep it securely tied. But if you want to add a closure, you can. And I'll show you how to do that if you want. So there's a couple different options. You can add a ribbon closure if you want. That's what I will be doing in my workshop video. So if you missed the workshop, then it's available on replay, so you can catch that one and see how to do the ribbon closure. Another closure that I have in mind is to do a kind of like a little bit more of a latch, I guess. And for that, I want some paper leather, and I understand that not everybody, you might not have paper leather, and so you could use cardstock if you prefer, but I like paper leather because it is tear resistant. And so you can, it's going to last a little bit more. So as a closure that might get, exercised, it might get opened and closed a lot, using something that's going to be a little bit more durable, that won't tear on you, will hopefully make it last a little bit longer. So let's see. I have paper leather in various different colors. I got this one is from Sizzix. It goes by a lot of different names. This one's called paper leather, and this was a multi-pack. So I think maybe I'm gonna go with this brownish color, because there's some of that inside here. So some of the patterns have a really nice kind of a mauve-y brown sort of color. But I also have white, and with white it's nice because maybe I'll use white. Oh, because it's more of a cream. That could work. Plus I have a scrap that I can use, because you don't need a lot. So rather than cut a sheet, the other option is you can color these. You can color them with your ink pads if you want, with your let's do that. So what color? Because I have this nice strip right here that would work just great. So basically what I'm looking to do is I want to create a latch from here, wrapped around to here maybe. And so I want this to kind of tuck in. You could make this be like a magnetic closure if you want. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to try to do something that's more of a hidden closure. So I think this little bit of scrap is going to be perfect. Well, that worked out well. All right, so let's cut off a nice piece here. This bit is a little bit off, so cut that off. And let's just cut this. I'm just gonna cut this so that it's nice and square. So we have that. Let's cut this, and we'll work with whatever's left. So this is what I will I'll be working with. It happens to measure almost 5.5, but to be honest, I don't think we're gonna need that much. So I might end up trimming that down some. So what I want to do is I'm gonna actually round one of these corners. I should say one of the ends. I'm gonna round 2 corners. So I'm just gonna put this in. Maybe this. I'm gonna do the 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch there. 1/2 inch there. Okay. So I have one end that's rounded. Now what I want to do is that's going to be the side that's going to tuck in to the front, and this will wrap around to the back and just get glued back here. I don't really need all of that length, but the reality is there's probably not enough left over to do anything else with it, so I might just glue it all down. And what I want to do is I'm going to sand these edges just a little bit because I can feel it's not rounded exactly. So you can just take an emery board, any sanding block, and if you want to smooth out those corners, any rough edges, you can do that. And what's going to happen is I'm going to have some pattern paper on top of this. So we will start by gluing this down. And let's make sure, yeah, this will open like that. I think that will be good, like that. And I don't want this to have to tuck too far in because basically, let me soften this a little bit. I'm just going to take a bone folder and get this to curl so that it's nice and soft. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to create like just a little channel here so that I can slide this in under the front cover and have that be the closure. So I don't want to have to like tuck it in too far. I think that's probably enough to go in like that. We'll see. I've never actually done this type of closure before, so we'll see if it works. So I'm just going to hold here so that I know I don't want to put adhesive beyond that strip. And we want this to be well stuck down. So again, I'm going to use my strong score tape and just get a little bit of it all the way down. Man, this is going to be completely glued down over top. So it's going to be very secure, securely attached, but let's just get a little bit of liquid adhesive just so that I have some wiggle room for placement. And then what I'm looking to do is, again, just want to make sure that's how we're going to open it. And so I want this to be my back. And I just want to line this up so that it's centered along this edge here. So something like that. Just gonna eyeball it. Okay. And so this will go like that. Now, I'm putting this on first because, like I said, I want this to be pretty hidden. You're basically just gonna see the latch, essentially. And so what I want to do is cut some pattern paper to hide that. So let's see what papers I have left, because I've made this album several times now and it does use a lot of papers. So this is a good project if you're really trying to smash a paper pad and use everything up. Let's see. So here are some fun options. Now, in cutting down my 4x4 pieces, I ended up with a lot of 2-inch wide strips. I cut those down to 1-inch wide, and then I just made myself some of these extra little quilted panels. Now, I made these to use them as card fronts, but it's pretty enough. I actually might cut this down and use it as my cover. Oh, that's kind of cute. Now, again, if you wanted a magnetic closure, you could do that. Your magnet would be showing on this side, but you could hide the magnet on this side. I'm not going to do that, but I might use one of these quilted patterns as the cover. I think I'll save, I have 2 of each, so maybe I'll save one. And then for the back, what should we use? I can use maybe this for the back. Just something a little bit nondescript. Alright. So let's cut this down. So when this is folded down, remember we started with 8.5 by 8.5, and now we're ending with 4.25 by 4.25. So however much of a border you want showing, you can decide what you prefer, and then cut your pattern paper down accordingly. So I'll just stay consistent with what I've been doing on the inside, and I'm gonna make this 4x4. And now I have some more 2-inch strips to make some more quilted patterns if I want. And then I will do the same here. So this is my custom pattern paper. So let's trim this down to, let's clean up this edge, really make sure this is nice and straight. Take a little bit off there. And this is 4 inches. And let's make sure this is also 4. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trim a little bit off, make sure it's really nice and straight, and then get this to 4. Alright. How fun is that? Isn't that cute? I still have this little bit left over that I can use for something if I want. Alright, so there's that. Then, now the back is going to be easy. We will just glue this down on top of, right on top of that closure. Our little latch. And again, if you want to use just plain cardstock for this piece, you can. I would maybe, oh, what paper weight would I suggest? I would suggest maybe something like 100-pound, 80-pound, maybe. You don't want to go too lightweight with it because you do want it to be sturdy. It's going to get pulled on, you know, as you open and close. And you also want it to be sturdy enough to kind of hold everything down, nice and flat. But too thick and it's going to be hard to kind of latch into the front cover. And I'll show you what I mean in a bit. So I'm just going to aim to get this centered. And I think that looks about right. Okay, and you can see this is going to be well secured because there's a lot of paper covering, sandwiched in between two pieces, so we are good there. Now, I don't want to just immediately glue this down because I need a sliver of a slot here to put that in. So what I want to do is, if it helps, and this is why paper leather is great, because I can bend this and however many times I want and it's going to be just fine. Now, the trick is that you want this to be long. Like if I wanted, I could still trim this down a little bit. I want it to be long enough so that when it slides in, it's going to be far enough into this piece of paper that it's going to hold everything closed. Because if you only tucked in about that much, maybe it's not enough to really hold everything down. But I think that's probably good. And if it's too long, like if it extended all the way in here, it might be hard to like roll this, back far enough to get it to feed into that channel. But how do we make room for that? How do we make a channel for that? So what I'm going to do is take some heavyweight cardstock, just whatever scrap bit of cardstock. If you have heavyweight, it's ideal. If not, you could use, maybe I'll do this. I'll use my low profile foam. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some low profile foam that gives a little bit more space for me to get this little latch under that front cover. So let me do that and get that started. This doesn't have any adhesive on it right now, so it's just foam. I can just cut. Oh, it's kind of wide enough, so maybe about that much. Yeah. So I have my pencil marks. That's where the channel needs to be. So I'm just gonna make some room for that channel. So do something like that, and just cut a little bit extra. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this because this foam doesn't yet have any adhesive on it. So I'll put some double-sided adhesive here. And a little bit onto this one. And I'll use some liquid adhesive on this as well. Okay. And just get some onto this last one. All right, so that's how far it goes in. So basically what I'm looking to do is get some foam all the way around, but not too close, because I don't want it to be like so snug that it becomes hard to slip that in. All of this is in an effort to make it easy to close this. If it's too hard and you have to fiddle with it too much, it'll just be too much of a challenge. And I don't want the foam to go too far out to the edges, because remember, I cut my pattern paper to 4x4. So I want to make sure that the foam is not going to be visible when that gets attached. Now, the way that I made that quilted pattern paper is this has double-sided adhesive on it. So I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a moment, because we can't have anything glued here. because this is where our latch needs to slide in. So I am going to have to actually glue another piece of cardstock onto this first, so that this panel has something, or, you know, glue something to the back of that panel. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Let's see. Let's get this down first. Okay, so we have foam everywhere to build a little bit of a channel for the latch to slide into. And if I released this liner, because this has got an adhesive liner, so this is all adhesive. If I were to peel that liner off and glue this down, there's going to be glue that glues closed this little channel that we've worked to make. So what I want to do is I want to actually back this with some cardstock. And that way I can just put glue where I want the glue, which is on the foam. So I'm just going to peel off my liner, and that's just because of how I made this. I just happened to make it so that it would be easy to use, basically peel and stick onto a card base. But now we're going to use it this way, so I kind of have to adapt it for the purpose of this particular cover. And so I'll go ahead and just trim that off. All right. So now that's all set, and I can just put adhesive on the foam, which is going to preserve this little channel so nothing gets glued down, nothing obstructs the latch from being able to slide into that space and basically hold our album closed. So let's, not that there's like a correct orientation, but you can pick the orientation that you like the best. And there we go. So, because with such a small canvas, I feel like rather than having a ribbon run through this, this nice little hidden closure, see how easy it is to tuck in? So you only really see that much of this little closure mechanism, and it's well secured. It keeps this nice and closed and tidy. You can still open it and expand this huge album. It's nice to just bring it all out, and then you can see everything all at once. That's what makes this a really great little brag book, because you can just put everything out on display. And you know, if you're showing off photos of your grandkids, your kids, then you know, everybody can see everything all at once. You don't have to kind of flip pages, and it's great. Lots of photo opportunities. I did finish decorating this after I filmed the making of it, and here's the final album. So once you expand, I just did the 4 main photo mats, and I created my little photo corners. So just did a different style photo corners. And then here on some of these pages, I made a little pocket So you can make little pockets as parts of the decoration of the album, and that way, maybe sometimes you want to put some photos, but maybe sometimes you also want to put some keepsakes. And then I left two of the larger squares open as journaling spots, so I could write something there and put a bit of journaling to go with the photos and the keepsakes. I hope you enjoyed my project today. Do check out the rest of the Enjoy This Life virtual retreat that's over on the Not Too Shabby channel. Thanks again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.